Hello again, and welcome to part two of what I think will be a three-part mini series talking about my favorite albums. Is it my favorite albums of all time? No, at least not this episode. I did that in a previous episode. If I can remember, I will try to link that in the description down below. I did that a couple of months ago, and it was what I called my 10 all-time. People love that expression, all-time albums. Which to me that's very all-encompassing, and it's big, and it's important, and it's vast and expansive, and it's difficult to do. To think that I have probably bought around, I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 records and CDs, albums, whatever you want to call them, titles in my life. So to pick 10. That's pretty difficult. And you have this discussion with your friends, and you think about it over the years, and you think, oh, this is one of my favorite albums ever, one of my favorite albums of all time. And then you realize there's about 50 albums on there, and to get it down to 10 is impossible. So what my criteria was for that one, for my favorite of all time, was they were all kind of older albums, the ones that I got when I was young, a kid into my teens. They really shaped my musical tastes, as they have pretty much they've changed over the years. Of course, hopefully everybody changes over the years, but I mean, in general, I still like rock and hard rock and metal music, and that will continue in this episode today. But those were all I thought doing 10 of all time is great. I mean, it's impossible because there's so many great albums that you get when you're 30, and it's impossible to enjoy those, or for those to have the impact as they did when you were 7 years old or 6 years old, as I was when I got Kiss Alive. God, I've mentioned that so many times. And so I started to think, all right, I'm going to do this into categories. So those I was born in 1969, and so my top 10 albums of all time, they're all pretty old. They were from the oldest was Black Sabbath, Paranoid, 1970. And the most recent was 1989, Faith No More, The Real Thing. It included Fair Warning, Diarrhea of a Madman, Master of Puppets, Among the Living, Appetite for an Onion. Did I say Power Slave was in there? What else was in there? I can't remember. As I said, I'll try to link it. I'll try to remember it to link it down below. So if you'd like, you can go back and watch that. And then, so I thought, you know what? So I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to do what I'm going to do today is my top 10 90s album. By that time, and this was great timing too, the end of a decade, 1989, there were two big shifts. One was, for me, I was turning 20 in 1990, and I'd been listening to music for a long time at that point. And also the switch, or the shift from albums to format, from the album to vinyl format to CD. And I got my first CD player in 1989, and things were different then musically, in terms of technology too, the format too, and also just my age. So that this is a good way. It's a good way to compartmentalize my favorite albums. So I'm going to do today my top 10. The criteria for today, they're just albums that I really love, that it's hard for me to call them all-time favorites, because they came along a little bit too late in my life. But oh my God, these are like, really top tier. There are some of these that I'm sure I listened to as much, or possibly even more, maybe even a lot more than some of those albums that were on my all-time list. But I view them differently, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. Now, as you can see, if I remember to put this as the title of the video, or as a like a picture, an image, of words in the thumbnail, why 12? Well, that's a good question. That's very astute that you notice it's 12. And everybody, we love 10 and 4 for some reason. Everybody talks about the big 4, or the Mount Rushmore or whatever, which is silly. And we love numbers that end in 0. And it's not like I just sat down last night and made this list. I've curated this list for years and years in my head. And when I thought about it, I thought, okay, I got my 10. I think that's pretty much it. And I maybe, changed a few over the last couple of months, or maybe even longer. And then I would add a couple more, and I think, okay, well, it's going to be 11. Because I was thinking, no, I got to keep it at 10. But, if I add this one that I kind of forgot, which one I think there's not one I can take out. So that was hard. And then I found, or I realized another one, which I talked about recently. I did an episode of I Want to Talk About This Album on this maybe 2 months ago. I don't know when. Sometime in November, I think. And it made me realize, God, you know what? I never really realized it, but that really needs to be on my list too. I'll try to remember to point that out when I get to that album here. So that's why 12. I just, I could make it 20 or 25 or 30, but you have to draw the line somewhere. It's too much. So I thought 12 is a good number. There were a couple of others that I thought, yeah, this is great, but no, it's not better than any of these other 12. So that's why 12. And also, just like I did with my all-time list, I say that I feel queer every time I say all-time. I'm not going to rank them. You're asking too much of me to rank them. I can say that I like this one better than this one, but to put them in order of the 10 or 12 of my favorite. So I'm not going to rank them, but I will kind of try to say, are they closer to number 1 or closer to the bottom, which is still amazing, number 10 or 11 or 12 out of the hundreds and hundreds of CDs, I guess, and albums that I bought in the 90s. That's still pretty good. So these are albums, my favorite albums of the decade of the 1990s. And I thought, how do I do the order? In the other one, I did them in chronological order, which is to say the order in which they come out, not the order in which I bought them. And I don't like repeating myself, believe it or not. So I thought I'll do these by alphabetical order, which means, if you don't know that, it means the order in which they appear in the alphabet. So A is going to be first. If there's something that begins with Z, or for you Americans, Z, that will be the last one I talk about. And this is done obviously not by album title, but by artist. All right. So are we ready to start? And I did count these of the 12 that I'm going to talk about today. I have done episodes of 8 of them. Episodes of I Want to Talk About This Album. So there are 4 that you've never heard me talk about. Maybe I will do episodes on those in the future. Maybe not. All right. So the first one, as we go here, and I'm going to show them all on CDs. I do have, how many of these do I have on vinyl? 1, 2, 3. I have 4 that I have on vinyl. I'm going to keep it old school 90s style and only show the CD versions. And it was also easier for me to just grab all the CDs instead of grabbing some CDs and some records. All right. So this is a little bit dusty. So the first one, in this list, my top 12 albums of the 90s is Alice in Chains, Dirt. And you know what I'm going to say a lot in this video, I think? I'm going to say, oh my God, because that's how I feel when I look. I've got them here in front of me. When I see all these albums and think about them, I think, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So Dirt, this came out in 1992. And my cat is joining me. This came out in 1992. I got Facelift when that was it was their first album. I had that when it was new and loved it. There was a time, I think briefly, and maybe even longer, where I think I like Facelift better than Dirt. But now over the last, I don't know how many years, it's become very clear to me that I do like Dirt easily better than Facebook. That's not because I don't like Facelift. It's because of how much I love Dirt. This really, when I think about it now, I think, how could I have ever liked Facelift more than Dirt? Again, just because Dirt is so great. And it is not grunge. I don't care that they're from Seattle. I don't care. This came out in 1992 or 93. Was it 93? I think it was. I don't see the date on here. Yeah, I'm sure it was 93. SAP was 90. Facelift was 90 or 91. SAP was 92. I'm sure this was 93. I always used to write the date. Oh, it was 92. So I bought this. You probably can't see it. I bought this on November 3rd, 1992. So it was 92. And this is a metal album. It's not a heavy metal album like Judas Priest or Iron Maiden or Black Sabbath, but it is a metal album. And it's just incredible. It's so dark. Probably up to that point, at this point in 1992, this was, I'm sure, and maybe still is, the most, the darkest album that I've ever bought. And you know, Alice in Chains in the next album, they always had, you know, dark songs. The next album had some, and Facelift did too. But I think this whole album, you know, beginning maybe with the cover, is just very, very dark. Even the song titles, Them Bones, Damn That River, Dirt, Godsmack, Junkhead, they just sound very, very dark and doomy. And I love this record. It's got such a great mood to it. And it's funny how dark it is. A lot of the hair metal people, and I was and still am a big fan of that music before this kind of music started to become popular. A lot of people poo-pooed it, a lot of hair metal fans, because they said rock and roll is supposed to be, that sounds like Paul Stanley, rock and roll is supposed to be whatever. And they said, no, it's supposed to be fun. There's no fun. Well, not everything is supposed to be fun. Sometimes things are not fun. But I get great joy out of listening to Alice in Chains' Dirt. It doesn't depress me. I think it's an unbelievable album. My favorite, and I'll try to talk about my favorite on each of these albums. On here, it's definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, people like to say, the title track, Dirt. Oh my God, it's just so dirty and doomy and sludgy and dark and moody and brooding and everything. Lyrically, musically, and that's a great thing about Alice in Chains too, their lyrics. And I guess a lot of bands you could apply this to. Lyrics really, really fit the music. What is the opening line of Dirt? I have never felt such frustration or lack of self-control. I want you to kill me and dig me under. I want to live no more. I want to taste dirty, a stinging pistol on my mouth, on my tongue. I want you to scrape me from the walls and go crazy like you've made me. Unbelievable. Dirt is a fantastic album. And you know what? I kind of forgot about this. I have this tattoo on my stomach. I can't really, I'm not far enough back, but I do have that tattoo on my stomach. Not with the AIC logo, with a face in the sun, but I do have that tattoo that I got in, I guess, around 1992 or 93. All right, so there's Alice in Chains' Dirt is the first one. Next, alphabetically, you can probably skip over the next 4 or 5 minutes of me talking, because it's an album that I'm sure none of you have ever heard of. Well, yeah, never heard for sure, and probably never heard of. Some of you, of course, are going to know who it is. But this is the real dark. Oh, and I should say, Dirt. Where would I rank that in these 12? It's not my favorite of the 90s. Maybe somewhere around the middle. I'd put it somewhere probably in 6 or 7. There are a few in my list here, or in my pile, that I like, I think, more than Dirt, and some less than Dirt. So I'd say Dirt is somewhere in the middle of my 12. This next one could be number 1. I maybe, even though this only came out, I think, in 1997. It's possible that I listened to this more than... there are a couple of other ones that I also listened to, but considering this more, I was going to say, considering this came out in 1997, I listened to this a lot. Although I guess most of its listens went into the 90s. I still listen to this record fairly regularly. And that's enough talking. I'm going to show you what it is. If I show you the cover, does anybody even know what this is? I'll give you a few seconds to put your answers down below, because if you wait any longer, I'm going to think you're a liar and you Googled it. But this is, and do you recognize who that is? Maybe you might recognize his face on the back. This is the only album on this list that is a solo artist, not a band. Look at that sharp haircut. This is Houston. The album title is Houston, We Have a Problem. The artist is Jason. Back then, he was going by just his first name, Jason, kind of like Cher and Madonna and other iconic luminary divas. This is Jason Bieler from Saigon Kick. Saigon Kick is one of my favorite bands. I've talked about I've done, I think, 3 or maybe 4 episodes of Saigon Kick, including a couple with Chris McClernand, who played bass in Saigon Kick. And this album, you won't like it, I promise. If you like the kind of music that I like in general, and if you like Saigon Kick especially, if you're a real Saigon Kick fan, you've probably heard this. If you haven't heard it and you like Saigon Kick, or if you haven't heard it and you like the kind of music that I like, I almost guarantee you won't like it. This doesn't belong in my collection. This is I should say first where I got this. This was, I think, the first album I ever bought on the internet. I got this online in 1997 from Jason's own, he had a record label and a website called BVB, which is Baron von Bielski. And I got this in 97 or 98. I don't know if I wrote the date on this one. There's the actual disc there. And this is a really thick booklet. Look, it's got, I love this, all the lyrics. Did I write the date on here? Oh, January 1st, 99. All right, so later than I thought. So I guess I think it must have come out in 1998. Anyway, the reason why this album is not something you're gonna like probably. There's very, very little on this album in terms of rock music. Maybe 2 songs. There's a lot. It's oh my God, this is very. Is it correct to say that there's a lot of electronic music? I would say not electronic and electronic inspired, true electronic, like a lot of the doom, 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 a lot of that kind of music. I really have no business liking this, but I do. This is, as I said, this is possibly number 1 on my list of all these, of the 90s. My favorite album in the 90s possibly is Houston We Have a Problem by Jason Bieler. It's such a weird album, and it's all, I think it was all really demos, which maybe makes it sound bad. To me, they sound like complete songs, and this was a great reason for Jason. Probably, he might be my favorite musician ever, more than anybody. Combination of he's maybe my favorite singer and maybe my favorite guitarist, for whatever those things are worth. Again, we like to have favorites and lists and things like this. So those combined with the songs that he writes are just unbelievable. And this album is so weird, maybe the weirdest album of the 2000 that I've bought. And I know this album, Stone Cold, oh my God, it's just unbelievable. Don't listen to it, honestly. Listen to it just so you can come and tell me what an idiot I am for liking it. It's just so fucking weird. And I love it. All songs written and performed by Jason except one, which is called Oh Yeah, which is an instrumental, which was written by Jason and Pete Dombrowski, who was in Saigon Kick in their later years. And Jupiter, which was written by Jason and Chris McClernand. In between Jupiter and Mars, the fire's burning. Very dancey song. This is possibly number 1 of all of the 90s. I love it. Next, alphabetically, it begins with D. The band begins with D, and it's a band called Down. This is Philip H. Anselmo, Pepper Keenan, Kirk. I can never know how to pronounce his name. Winstein or Winstein or Weinstein or Weinstein. I'm not sure. The 4 different ways you could pronounce his name. From Crowbar, and Jimmy Bower from I Hate God, and Todd Strange later, although I think Kirk or Pepper or someone played bass on this album. It was credited to Todd Strange. And I remember I did an episode of this, I want to talk about this album, and I blew it. That was, I think, my worst episode ever. I felt like I never really said much about it, and even though I love it, as I said, one of my favorites, this is such a heavy album. Riff after riff after riff. It's relentless. Relentless riffing is what it is. And it's heavy. It's, and I think their second album too it's very, very dark and heavy and lyrically and musically, similar to Alice in Chains' Dirt. But it's also very, very beautiful. There are a couple of songs. Oh, I didn't mention my favorite song on this on Houston We Have a Problem. I honestly can't pick one. There's 15 songs on this one. Uh Shadows, maybe. I'm not sure. Anyway, it doesn't matter because you don't know what the song sounds like anyway. So this one, yeah, it's just unrelentless riffing, and oh yeah, I was saying how beautiful some of the songs are. Pray for the Locust, a little acoustic instrumental filler, but good filler. Stone the Crow is beautiful. They have such melody in their in some of their songs, in addition to the crushing heaviness. I love it. Favorite song on this one, again, so tough to pick. Possibly Lifer. Yeah, let's go with Lifer. I think Lifer is probably my favorite from Down. Did I mention this is called NOLA, which stands for New Orleans, Louisiana? I bet you didn't know that. Now you do. Where would I put this? This is and I didn't know about this record. This came out in 1995. I didn't even know it existed until it was quite some time, months or maybe a year. Did I write the date on here? I got it February 19th, 96. So it came out in 95. I don't know when in 95, but I remember there used to be, when I lived in Canada, there used to be a show. I used to listen to this radio station from St. Catharines, close to Toronto, called 97.7 Hits FM. And they used to have this music show at 6 called Music, I think it was called Music Notes at 6. And it was like a 1-hour show where they talked about music. New releases and things happening in the music world. So outdated to have a show, to think about that now, that a show like that existed. And I remember listening to that once, and they talked about, I can't remember what the context was. And they said, yeah, and they mentioned Down, Phil Anselmo and Pepper King. I thought, man, I've never even heard of that. And I bought this, and it became one of my favorite albums in the 90s, which is why I'm talking about it. This is maybe in the, what else have I got here? This could be top 5. NOLA by Down. It's a really, really good album. Next, alphabetically F. It's an album called Angel Dust, and it's by Faith No More. Interesting to note that Faith No More is the only band who appears on both lists on my all-time favorite albums. I had The Real Thing from 1989, and I'm going to put this one too, 1992, Angel Dust. I struggled for quite some time. I really, really struggled. I had mental problems. I was despondent over deciding which one do I like better. Do I like Angel Dust or Real Thing? I've settled on The Real Thing over the years. I think I do like that better. But this was such a fucking weird album. Quite different than, you could say all Faith No More albums are different, although they all kind of also have the same qualities. The Real Thing was great, and it was weird, but it was also quite, I would say, quite easy to access. It was melodic, very catchy. This was the opposite. This was a kind of harsh, abrasive, strange, kind of a hard to listen to album. I still, as many times as I've listened to this album, as much as I love it, I still don't know a large part of the lyrics, and which is the opposite of The Real Thing. I know every single word on that album, but this was just such a weird album, and I love it. This is, I can try to separate between my favorite and the best, even though The Real Thing I think is I think it is for sure my favorite Faith No More album. Angel Dust, yeah, I think it is like their signature album. I think this album really defines Faith No More. Favorite song on this one, maybe Caffeine. I mean, some I know right away. I knew right away that Dirt was my favorite on the Alice in Chains record. Yeah, Caffeine. Smaller and Smaller, maybe one of those. Incredible album, hard to listen to, I think for some people, and it flopped, kind of. Next is, it's G. You know, it comes after F for Faith No More. G stands for Goldfinger, and this album is called Hang Ups. And I got into Goldfinger. Their first album came out in 95 or 96, and my good friend Pete at the time said, oh, there's this great band called Goldfinger. He used to listen to a radio station called CFNY 102.1 while I was listening to 97.7 Hits FM. And they, I guess, 97 Hits FM, 97.7 Hits FM was more classic rock and metal and things like that. 102.1 CFNY, The Edge, was more, maybe more modern stuff, a little bit more alternative. Going back even to the 80s, they were kind of like that. And so he heard Goldfinger on CFNY, which I never would have heard of. And he told me about them. And we listened to their first record, their self-titled record in 96. I remember always listening to it in his car. And when I first heard Goldfinger, I thought, I don't really like these guys. They sound like, especially the first album, sound like Green Day. And I was a pretty big Green Day fan at that point. And I thought, it's okay. But they really, my first impression was, oh my God, this band really sounds like Green Day. Kind of a pop punk sound, a little bit more ska and definitely more horns than Green Day. Not on every song, but they do have a couple of songs on each album with horns. And then I ended up really liking that first album. And then this was the album that came after it. And just unbelievable. This is also a contender along with Jason Bieler. Houston Have a Problem. This is a contender for number one. Maybe I even like this one better than Bieler's album. I'm not sure. Again, I don't want to spend too much time thinking about that. I've already spent decades thinking about it. But every single, this might be overall one of the catchiest records you've ever heard, the most energetic records you've ever heard. The kind of happy, this is the opposite of Dirt, where Dirt was very sad and dirgy and dingy and dirty and doomy and whatever adjective you want to think of that starts with D. This was the opposite. This was very happy, very very feel-good album. Incredible. Songs are all about and Goldfinger songs, as they had a tendency to be, at least on the first one. On this one, this is their second one. The next one was Stomping Ground. That was the same. Open Your Eyes was the same. A lot of songs about relationships and breaking up and things like that, which for me at the time was very appealing. I love this album. My favorite song on this one, this is one of these albums I feel like every song was a favorite at some point. Maybe Authority. I Need to Know. If Only, This Lonely Place. You might know this song from Superman, and I love Superman too. Yeah, hard to pick a favorite on this one. The Last Time is great too. This album is fucking awesome, as they all are. Next is a little bit of a strange pick here. This is a Canadian band. Most of you have probably not heard of this band. This band is called I Mother Earth. The album is called Scenery and Fish. I did do an episode of this a couple of years ago, I think. You know, I don't really like, I've talked about this before, I don't really like, I don't like a lot of Canadian bands. There are not a lot of Canadian bands that I was a real fan of. I loved Razor and Sacrifice. I did an episode maybe 4 or 5 months ago about the Tragically Hip, who I liked at the beginning, then I was very tired of them. Now I kind of like them again. But I hated that shit, like Honeymoon Suite, Loverboy. Brighton Rock is just some of the worst crap I've ever heard. That's like Peter Criss 1978 solo album level crap. Glass Tiger. Oh, that's even worse than Brighton Rock, Glass Tiger. And I've talked about this before. I felt like Canadian music was being shoved down my throat when I lived in Canada, because they had these, and I guess still have these CanCon rules. That's called Canadian content, where radio stations had to play X amount of Canadian content, either by Canadian bands or songs that were written by Canadians. Maybe the parameters were kind of broad. The producer of the album had to be Canadian, something. And I just thought a lot of Canadian music got played just because it was Canadian, not because it was good. And I always kind of resented that. But I Mother Earth is different. And also a lot of Canadian bands, they sounded Canadian, which is not a good thing. But I Mother Earth, their first album, this is their second album, Scenery and Fish. This is, I have to say, this is, I'm sure, my favorite Canadian album ever. My favorite album by a Canadian band. Their first album was called Dig, and that came out in 93. This came out in 96, by the way. Dig came out in 93, and I knew about I Mother Earth before Dig came out. They were, a Toronto band, and I lived there, and they were, known locally and had a pretty big following until Dig came out in, I think, the summer of 93. And I loved Dig, and I thought, oh my God, this album is really, really good. It doesn't sound Canadian, and I just really, really like it. And then this came out quite some time later, 96. Dig, I think, came out in the summer of 93. This came out, so I got this April 24th, 1996, and possibly that was the day it was released. I was really, 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 really anticipating this album. I couldn't wait for it to come out. And so it's possible I got it the first day. Looking at this now, I see, this must have been one of the first albums that was a CD. Was it called a CD-ROM? Yeah, it says this section covers the basic installation instructions for the multimedia portion of this CD. There are more detailed instructions on the CD itself located in the README file. If you can't access the files when you put the CD in your CD-ROM drive, if you're under 30 years old, you're probably thinking, what the hell language is this guy speaking? Access the files when you put the CD in your CD-ROM drive. Chances are you need updated software for your CD-ROM drive. Call your drive manufacturer for more details, or visit our website, http://www.netmedia.com. How to install? Yeah, you have to install QuickTime. Check your video card. Check monitor video card settings. Best settings are 640 to 480. My God, it's like this. For Windows, it says just click once on the I Mother Earth icon. Anyway, so this was, I guess, one of the first, possibly the first album that I ever bought that had this. And if you want to see what I Mother Earth looks like, there they are. They're very handsome gentlemen, as all Canadians have a tendency to be. And so the first single that came from this was called One More Astronaut. That came out, and I was dying. Every time I turned on the radio, I thought, oh, is today going to be the day when they finally play the new I Mother Earth song? And they finally did. And I couldn't get enough of it. I still love One More Astronaut. And this album, One More Astronaut, I still listen to that song. Since I've pretty much made the shift to almost exclusively listening to my music digitally, I listen to, I don't know if I've ever gone a month, maybe even not any more than a couple of weeks without ever listening to One More Astronaut, and probably a couple of other songs from this record. It's so good. It's so, it doesn't sound Canadian. It's kind of, it's not hard rock. It's not metal. It's not alternative. It's got maybe elements of all of those things. And it's just lyrically, oh man, I Mother Earth lyrically have maybe their drummer, Christian Tanner, he writes all their lyrics, I think. Possibly he writes my favorite lyrics more than anybody. Him along with Steve Perry from Cherry Poppin' Daddies, Eddie Vedder, I guess too, maybe Chris Cornell. I love their lyrics. And this album had, it's 12 songs, and some of these songs are just these really long, meandering in a good way. I shouldn't say meandering, that sounds bad. They're these big journeys. They kind of start here and they go around like this. How Many More Times by Led Zeppelin's like that. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, Iron Maiden, Master of Puppets. War Pigs, I love those songs, and there's a couple of them here. Earth, Sky, and Sea is like that. Shortcut to Moncton. What else is like that? At least those two. These really long, big, vast, wide songs. I love it. My favorite song on here, as I mentioned, I could never get enough of One More Astronaut, but I also love Used to Be All Right. Shortcut to Moncton, and I got a real appreciation. I always love this album, but I got a true appreciation for it and for them, for I Mother Earth as a band. And I saw them in the early days too. But when my dad died, I have a real connection to him. My dad died in October 2015. October 18th, 2015, my dad died. And, you know, he lived in Canada and I live in Mexico. And so when my dad died, I had to fly back to Canada. And just by pure luck, I Mother Earth was playing a concert the night before my dad's, you know, they don't call it a funeral, they call it a celebration of life. And I Mother Earth was playing a concert the night before. That was on Saturday, that was in October. They were playing at Maxwell's in Waterloo, Ontario. And I thought, oh man, I love I Mother Earth. And they, you know, they're not a big, they'd kind of come back. They were away. They had broken up years and years ago, and they kind of came back with a one single song called, what was that first song? We Got the Love. That came out in 2012 maybe. And they weren't the touring band, but they did occasional shows. So for them to be doing this show at Maxwell's in Waterloo was great. And I thought, oh, perfect timing. I'll never see them again, which I'm more confident of now than ever that I will never see I Mother Earth again, because they're not going to come to Mexico. I don't know when I'll be back in Canada, especially since they don't really do too many shows. And that is one of, after, you know, 40 now, coming up on 42 years of going to concerts, that I Mother Earth concert was one of my favorite concerts ever. Maybe top 10 for sure, maybe top 5. It just really, really got me. I think because my dad had died, and I just really, you know, felt like I needed to, I don't know, get something out. And, you know, timing, as they say, timing is everything. And if I had just been in Canada for a visit and gone to that concert, maybe I still would have liked it, but it was very cathartic. And I was in the very front row, and I waited longer than I should have to get in. In Canada, people don't really line up for these general admission concerts, but I wanted to get there early to get the front. And I was singing along, and at that time they had a replacement singer for the singer for I Mother Earth on this album, and their first couple of albums was Edwin. And they replaced him for their next albums with a guy called Brian Byrne, who also sang on We Got the Love. And then they put out a couple of other singles in the 2010s. We Got the Love was the first one. What was the other one? Sensation. Blossom. Oh my God, Blossom is one of the top I Mother Earth songs. And I don't know, I can't remember the other one. It was a more up-tempo one. Anyway, so they have a song, not on this album, but on Dig, called Not Quite Sonic. And I was in the front row fucking rocking out and singing. And Brian Byrne gave me the mic, and I sang a verse of Not Yet Sonic, Not Quite Sonic. And there's no video of it. I've never seen video of it. I'd love to see that. That was very cool. But yeah, anyway, I've talked about this album for a long time, so I'll stop now. But I love it. And I didn't pick a favorite song over the years. Oh, and that, I should say that concert in 2015, that, you know, gave me the realization that I really, really love my I Mother Earth more than I ever thought I did. Yeah, I've really grown to appreciate maybe Shortcut to Moncton. 7 minutes and, is it 56 or 36? It looks like 7 minutes 56 seconds. What a journey that song is. Shortcut to Moncton. I love it. Next is M. This might be hard to see. I maybe have to open it up to, you know, it's one of these ones, and there's another one that's like this too. So there's the full album cover. But back then, when CDs, you know, this was what you saw when you bought it. Was it, how did it go? Like this, I think. I'm not sure. Anyway, this is the full album cover, and it is by these guys. This band is called Mindfunk. This album is called Dropped. And this is maybe, oh, and where would I put I Mother Earth, Scenery and Fish in my of these 12? Closer to the bottom, which is, that sounds bad to say. Remember, these are 12 albums from the 90s, so it's in my top 12 or 10 of the 90s. It might be around 9 or 10, I would say. All right. So Mindfunk Dropped. This was one, I and the reason I think this one stands out to me is because it's kind of a standalone record more than any of the other ones. Mind Funk was not, they only had 3 albums. They never really made any kind of impact. Although Lars was a big fan. I think he even championed how great their first record was in 1991. This came out in 93. So this really stands out. I really, other than this album, I never got into that first album too much. That first album had a lot of hype. And when it came out, I bought it and I liked it, but never got into it that much. And then they had another record after this called People Who Fell from the Sky, which I would love to find. If anybody has an extra copy, or if you see a copy of Mind Funk People Who Fell from the Sky, please send it to me. I would be very, very happy if somebody gifted me Mind Funk People Who Fell from the Sky. I've never seen it anywhere. So this album really stands out because I've never seen them live. I don't think I ever saw Mind Funk. No, they did have a video from the first album, maybe Sugar Ain't So Sweet or Big House Burning, I can't remember. But yeah, so this album really stands out because there's not really a lot of Mind Funk material in the world. And I love this. And listening to this now, and I always liked it, but this one I really, really, similar to I Mother Earth, Seen Her in Fish, I really came to appreciate it much later. It was probably into the 2000s or so. This came out in 93. It was maybe into the 2000s when I really, really started to love it. And then even more recently in the last 10 years or so, when I kind of discovered this, bands like Graveyard, The Shrine, Cadaver, these kind of modern contemporary bands. Who else is like that? Radio Moscow, Venom Sabathi. They call it stoner metal, something like that. Mind Funk, and this is quite different, I think, from their first album. This, to me, I started to realize in 2015 or 16, 17, around there, this sounds retroactively, kind of a contrast here, this sounds very, very contemporary. This is also similar. I would put this in the category of Alice in Chains, Dirt, and Down, NOLA. This is also very slow, sludgy, heavy, but also incredibly beautiful. There's some just really, really beautiful songs on here. Sonically, this album is fucking awesome. I love the way the guitars pan. They have 2 guitarists, and the guitars pan from ear to ear. Very different than I love Iron Maiden. I'm a massive Iron Maiden fan, and Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and a lot of other metal bands or rock bands that have 2 guitars, it's often 2 guitars playing the same thing. But in this, in Drop, there are many, many songs and many parts of songs where you clearly hear one guitar playing something and one guitar playing something totally different underneath it or on top of it. This is such a great album. This is one that you should listen to. Don't go listen to Jason Bieler, Houston Will Have a Problem, because I promise you're not going to like it. But I think if you like my kind of music, you would really, really, really like Mind Funk Dropped. Favorite on this one, maybe Goddess, In the Way 11-Ton Butterfly. What else? Oh, Wisteria maybe could be a favorite too. Yeah. So there we go. Mind Funk Dropped. And this would probably be down near the bottom. Maybe 10, 11, 12. Maybe somewhere around there. Next is... this was a huge album. Some of these other ones you've not heard of. You haven't probably heard of I Mother Earth, Seen Her in Fish. You've maybe not heard of Dropped. You have definitely not heard of Jason Bieler, Houston Will Have a Problem. But I think you know this. It was the #1 album on Billboard. And it is Pantera, Far Beyond Driven. I was a Pantera fan. I heard Pantera in the early days when they weren't officially called Glamterra, but retroactively people have come to call them Glamterra. And I did know them back then. I heard Pantera. I think I read about them in magazines. And I think, I don't know if I first heard them, but I remember hearing or seeing them. I'm sure it was on one of those, they had these video magazines. They came out every, a couple of months or something, called Hard and Heavy. And I think I saw Pantera on there and didn't like them at all. Still don't like, those Projects in the Jungle and Power Metal. What are the other 2 shitty Pantera albums called? I can't remember. Those albums suck. So Cowboys from Hell came out, and I was a big fan of Cowboys from Hell and Vulgar Display of Power even more. And then this came out, and I thought it's impossible. I can't like anything more than Vulgar Display of Power, but I did. But I remember when I first heard this, I thought it sounds strange, but this is too heavy. It sounds like Pantera trying to be heavy, because Vulgar Display of Power, it was very heavy, but it also, it had a great groove to it, and some things on this did too. But the first song on this is called Strength Beyond Strength. And I just thought, nah, man, that's Pantera shouldn't be that heavy. It just kind of sounds, I don't know, maybe even kind of stupid. But the more I listened to it, and I don't think it took very long, I thought, oh man, this album is good. And yeah, this was for sure my favorite album from 1994, obviously, because I don't think there's anything else from 1994. This was, for me, Pantera at their best. Devastating, heavy, screaming. There's not a metal band. I think Pantera really, maybe more than anybody, kept metal alive in the 90s. And Far Beyond Driven is top of the game for Pantera. Favorite on here is, my first thought is I'm Broken. 25 Years, Shedding Skin. Maybe Use My Third Arm. Those, one of those is I'm sure my favorite. Those are my top favorites. And where would I put this? This is maybe, this might be around maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6, somewhere around there. Yeah, this is a real horrible album cover, by the way. Pantera album covers, they all sucked, including this one. And the band one is even worse. Pantera, Far Beyond Driven. Next, all right, now this one, I think I mentioned this at the top. This was one, this was the 12th one. This was a late addition to the list. I wasn't going to add it. Well, I'll tell you what it is, and then I'll tell you why. It's Pearl Jam 10. This is another one similar to Mind Funk Dropped, that in order to see the full album cover, you had to open it up. This is 6 panels. Dropped was, no, this is 9. 9 panels. Dropped was only 4. And when did I buy this? October 30th, 1991 was when I bought that. The reason I wasn't going to put this was, I don't even know if this is my favorite Pearl Jam album of the 90s. Pearl Jam, they were busy in the 90s. 10 was first, Versus came next, Vitalogy was 94, No Code 96, and Yield 98. Like I said, I don't even know if this is my favorite Pearl Jam album of the 90s. So I think, how can I put this in my top 10? Because it was kind of one of the first ones I thought of, and I thought, no, how can I put in my top 10 of the 90s if it's not even my favorite Pearl Jam album? I thought I like Versus better than this. Now I like Yield better than this. But, the reason I justified adding this, and this was number 12 to add, not because I think of it at the least, but just I kind of struggled with the criteria for adding it, is the importance of it. Was their first album. And when I did an episode of 10, I think it was about 2 or 3 months ago, and that was the first time I had listened to it, the full album, in quite some time. And I thought, man, I like this. I loved it at the time. And then kind of over the years, I kind of, because I listen to Pearl Jam live more than anything. I don't really listen to their studio albums too much, except when they're new. And so I hadn't listened to 10 for a long time. But then when I listened to it in preparation for for doing the episode of 10, I kind of remembered that, yeah, man, this really, really takes me back to 1991, and I love it. So that's why, like I said, I wasn't sure to add it or not. So I said it was the 12th one added. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's my 12th, at the bottom for how much I like them. Maybe something like that. But it's obviously one of the all-time classic albums. That's indisputable. Or is it undisputable? I'm not sure which one it is. But it is a great album. I get great joy of listening to this. Favorite songs on this? Very easy. It's either Oceans or Release. One of those two. So Pearl Jam 10. 3 more to go. This is another one. This I think became 11. Yeah, 10. And this one, I already had my 10. And I thought, what about this and what about this? And I kind of did forget about this. I should have added this much sooner. and it's Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magik. Something you'll notice about all of these albums on CDs is they're all long. All the ones that I did in my top 10 of all time, those were all, I guess, they were all records. The most recent one or the latest one was Faith No More, The Real Thing. So most of those were, in the 35, probably to 45-minute range. All these CDs that I have, that came out in the 90s, they're much longer. And I think this is probably the longest out of all of them. Let me go back and see. Dirt, I would guess, is probably around 50, 55. Houston We Have a Problem, I think, is around 65. NOLA is probably around close to 55 or 60. Angel Dust is probably 50. Hang-Ups is probably fairly short. Hang-Ups, I think, is around 40 minutes. Although they also have like an 8 minutes of silence, one of those bullshit things at the end. Scenery and Fish is pretty long. That's probably 65. Dropped Mind Funk is, I would guess, that's 60, 65. Far Beyond Driven is probably 55 or so. 10 is probably relatively short, maybe 50, 55. So Blood Sugar Sex Magik, I'm sure, is the longest. Yeah, it's probably longer than the other two. This, I think, was around 70 minutes. And I've talked about this before. I generally don't like long albums. I only realized this after. I guess at the time in the 90s, I thought, oh, this is great. Albums are getting longer. That's great. You get more music. And then it wasn't until a long time later that I realized that's not necessarily a good thing, because it takes away from, it's hard to make an album that you think is great from beginning to end, 35, 40 minutes. So how do you expect to do that for 70 minutes? This is one of the exceptions. There's not one song on here that I could omit. And there are 17 songs. And I got this September 24th, 91, down there in the corner. And I had Mother's Milk before this. I knew Red Hot Chili Peppers. I know True Men Don't Kill Coyotes. Didn't really like it. I didn't like it at all. I thought they were in, what was the other one? Catholic Schoolgirls Rules. I knew that song too. This was in like 87, 88. Didn't like Red Hot Chili Peppers. I thought they were kind of silly, kind of a novelty act, maybe, kind of a joke. And then Mother's Milk came out, and I thought, oh, this band is really good. And I bought that album, and I liked it. I would even say I loved it. And then when Blood Sugar Sex Magik came out, oh, they became one of my favorites. And still, as I said, one of my favorite albums in the 90s. Yeah, 17 songs and 17 great songs. Maybe looking at it now, The Righteous and the Wicked is probably my least favorite. Favorite on here, the opening track, Power of Equality. I got tapes, I got CDs, I got My Public Enemy. My lily white ass is tickle pink when I listen to music that makes me think. Madder Than a Motherfucker, Lick My Finger. Can't Commit, Can the Memories Linger. Count 'Em All Quick, Little Piccadilly Circus. I don't know. I Could Have Lied is fantastic. Mellowship Slinky in B major. Which one is that? I got a mellow ship. I got a fellowship. I got a nonstop Yo Swan Hello chip. Born to adore the big bad bison. Thunderstorms and a man like Tyson. Popcorn, peanuts, looking at big butts. I know I cannot keep my mouth shut, rocking to the beat of the Fabulous Forum. My Lakers, I adore 'em, blessed by lady when I tell her that I do indeed love to smell her. Sopping wet your pink umbrella. Do the dance with Isabella. Yes, maybe that's my favorite. Mellowship Slinky in B major. The Greeting Song. You know what? I just saw something yesterday or 2 days ago funny about the Greeting Song that I didn't know this, but apparently Anthony Kiedis in his book years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, he said he didn't like this song. And I just read this. I didn't read the book, but I just saw this came up in one of these, you follow these music pages on social media. And no, you know where it was? It was Flea. I saw Flea on Rick Beato. If anybody, I'm sure, hopefully some of you, or a lot of you follow Rick Beato. And Flea talked to Rick Beato recently, and Rick Beato posted a clip of his conversation with Flea. And he asked him something, and Flea said, he asked him, I think, what was your favorite or what was the best Chili Peppers album? And Flea said Californication. And then he talked about, it's close to Blood Sugar Sex Magik, but he said we should have left the greeting song off. And I thought, wow, it's not just that I like it. I thought, like, that song totally fits the album. And then I read that apparently they didn't like the song because Rick Rubin, the producer, apparently it was his idea. He said, we need a song about like cars and girls. And they kind of begrudgingly wrote, or Anthony Kiedis wrote the lyrics to the greeting song. I think that's a great song. How does it go, the greeting song? Driving around, got my baby in my top down, merry-go-round. I need you for my love. Throwing me down in the backseat, underground. I'm in the mound, I make it for my love. Anyway, yeah, that's an excellent song. Oh, Sir Psycho's Sexy. How could I forget about that? That is maybe the best Chili Peppers song ever. That's, how long is that? It's about 9 minutes. 8:24. Yeah, that's a rare Chili Peppers song. That is one of these long journeys like the ones I mentioned before. Sir Psycho's Sexy, That Is Me. What's the opening line of Sir Psycho's Sexy? Oh man, I want to listen to this record. I haven't listened to it for a while. A long, 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 long time ago, before the wind, before the snow, lived a man I know, lived a freak of nature named Sir Psycho. Sir Psycho Sexy, That Is Me. Sometimes I find I need to scream. Deep inside the Garden of Eden, standing there with my heart on bleeding, there's the devil in my dick and some demons in my semen. Good God, no, that would be treason. Believe in me, she gave good reason. Booty looking too good not to be squeezing. Cream a beaver, hotter than a fever. Well, I'm a giving cause she's the receiver. I won't and I don't hang up until I please her. Making her feel like an overachiever. I take it away for a minute just to tease her. Then I give it back a little bit deeper. Sir Psycho Sexy, That Is Me. Oh man, that's a fucking awesome song. Yeah, this is a really, really good album. Considering how long it is, 70, maybe 72 minutes. It's really, really good. As I said, it was one of the last ones that I put. I'd maybe put this around, maybe, I don't know, 10 or 11, maybe somewhere around there. All right? Blood Sugar Sex Magik. Next, there's two more. Mercifully, there's only two more. I hope maybe some of you can actually listen to this. You don't need to see me, although why wouldn't you want to? But maybe as you're cooking dinner or cleaning the house or whatever you're doing, you can listen to me in the background. Next one is, hey, look at this. It's Saigon Kick, Devil in the Details. I talked about this about 3 months ago with Chris McClernand. It was right here. We did an in-depth look, analyzing track by track of Devil in the Details. I love Saigon Kick. This is, to get right to it, this is also a contender for number one. I would say this, Jason Bieler, Houston Had a Problem, Goldfinger, Hang-Ups, maybe those are my contenders for number one. And it's funny because I feel like every Saigon Kick album got better. I love the first album when I first heard it. I seriously, I ran out and I bought it immediately. I saw them on Much Music. I think it was a Saturday. It was in March 1991. And Jason Bieler and Matt Kramer, I think, were on Much Music in Toronto. They played because they were opening for Cheap Trick that night. They played the video for What You Say. And I immediately went to the record store when that video ended and bought the first album. Loved it. And then The Lizard came out. I liked it more. And then Water came out and Matt was gone, who was the singer, and Jason was taking over the vocals. I thought, oh man, I love those first two Saigon Kick records. How am I going to like them with the new singer? And I liked it even more. And then this came out and I liked it even more. This is very, very top contender for number one. And also, this is a pretty long one too. I think there are 15 songs, 3, 6, 9, 12... 16 songs. Well, this edition has 2 bonus tracks. This is the German import version. The original version had a totally different album cover and was missing those 2 bonus tracks, which are Sky Is Falling and the one. This really showed how weird and different Saigon Kick was, and also maybe a precursor to Jason's weirdness on Houston We Had a Problem. This was 95. Houston We Had a Problem, I think, was 97. Listening to Houston We Had a Problem, going back to that, I think, yeah, I can kind of see he was kind of touching on this, especially with songs like The One and maybe Eden, something like that. But this is much more of a rock record than Used to Have a Problem, which has no rock. It's almost all electronic. Anyway, yeah, Devil in the Details, top contender for the top spot. Favorite on here, probably Russian Girl. That's to me my go-to. Maybe my favorite Saigon Kick song is Russian Girl. But I think, man, there's Spanish Rain, Everybody, Flesh and Bone, Sunshine, Afraid. This album, obviously, it's incredible. It's maybe my favorite album in the '90s. And then the last one, this is another one that I did do an episode of, and it's Soundgarden. This is the last one. This is number 12, Soundgarden. Badmotorfinger. I maybe wouldn't have had this on my list some years ago. And I always was a Soundgarden fan. At the time, they were not. I got into them on the first album. My friend in 1989, my friend Don Robinson, he called me and said, "Oh, Dan, you gotta." Whenever everybody tells a story, they always mention the person's name. He probably didn't say, "Hey, Dan." He just said, "Hey, you gotta listen to this band. I just heard them called Soundgarden." I remember when he said the name on the phone, I thought he was saying sound guard, like they guard the sound. And then I realized after it was Soundgarden, and it was, I think it was Loud Love, or it was from Louder Than Love. The song, I think, was Loud Love. Anyway, I thought, yeah, they're a pretty good band. I liked them. And then this came out after that, and I liked it even more. And I always loved this album. And I think it was, at some point I struggled between this and Superunknown being my favorite. But over the years, I've realized that I do like this better. And Superunknown is a fucking awesome, but that is too long. That's also around 70, maybe 75 minutes. And there could have been a few things I think cut from there. But this is great. And similar to I, Mother Earth, I had kind of a late, like a reconnection with Soundgarden. I saw them, they played in Mexico City in 2013, I think it was. And I hadn't seen them live since 1993. And I loved it. That was such a great concert. It was the first time I'd seen them 3 times, I think, before, but never headlining. That was the first time I saw them headlining in Mexico City in 2013. And that really, made me appreciate how good they are and kind of rekindled my very strong interest in Soundgarden. And then I guess also when Chris Cornell died in 2015, that maybe go. Oh no, sorry, that was also after King Animal. It was kind of a combination of King Animal coming out, which I love. That was the first Soundgarden record in like 15 years. And that combined with seeing them live on that King Animal tour really made me go back and say hello to Soundgarden again. And I've realized that this is my favorite Soundgarden album, obviously, because it's one of my favorite albums in the 90s. I'd probably put this maybe around also 10, 11, 12, somewhere down near the bottom. But it's great. Favorite song on this? Off the top of my head, probably Searching with My Good Eye Closed, Mind Riot. Oh, Jesus Christ, Pose. No, maybe that's a favorite. Oh my God, that's such an incredible song. Rusty Cage. Yeah, this is one of the albums that's maybe it's easier for me to, just eliminate the ones that are not my favorites. New Damage was never a favorite. Holy Water. Yeah, this album is incredible, obviously. And that's it. There they are. I've kept them in the order if you'd like to see them all stacked up. That's what they look like. Alice in Chains, Dirt, Jason Bieler, Houston We Have a Problem. What's that? Oh, Down, Nola, Faith No More, Angel Dust, Goldfinger Hang-Ups, Jason Bieler. No, oh sorry, I, Mother Earth, Scenery and Fish, Mindfunk, Dropped, Pantera, Far Beyond Driven, Pearl Jam 10, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, Saigon Kick, Devil in the Details, and Soundgarden, The Garden of Sound, Badmotorfinger. That's all. There will be one more episode in this little mini series talking about my favorite albums. You got to put them into different compartments. So there will be one more. I don't know when I'll do it. I've kind of, it's been stewing in my head for some time. I think I have it down, but I need the motivation to talk about it. I'll probably do it sometime in the next, it won't be in the next month, that's for sure. Maybe in March or April. So you can stay tuned if you like seeing a guy sitting in his house talking about music. All right, that is all. Thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of it. This is my favorite 12 favorite albums of the 90s. Thank you. See ya.